In the year 2057, as the sole star of our solar system, the Sun, begins to fade, Earth slowly descends into a frozen twilight. Humanity faces the threat of total extinction, and the only hope for survival rests on the mission of the spacecraft Icarus I. It has been 16 months since its launch, and now the ship is nearing the Sun, protected from the lethal rays by a massive reflective shield. The mission of the Icarus I crew is to approach the Sun as closely as possible and detonate a colossal bomb to reignite the star, restoring its former brilliance. The ship's shield is equipped with a small window, through which, using a powerful light filter, the crew can observe the Sun. Onboard psychologist Dr. Searle decides to experience a so-called solar shower, allowing himself to be exposed to just 3% of the Sun's real light. Filled with fresh emotions, he shares his sensations with the rest of the crew over dinner. Communications officer Harvey warns the crew that in 24 hours, they will lose contact with Earth for good. The crew is given the opportunity to send final messages home, and many seize this rare chance to connect with their loved ones. Inspired by Dr. Searle's account, the ship's captain, Kaneda, also decides to take a solar shower. Meanwhile, botanist Corazon reports that the oxygen being produced in the onboard greenhouse is abundant, and everything is proceeding according to plan. They discuss the fate of Icarus I, the first ship sent on the same mission, which mysteriously disappeared into the depths of space. Meanwhile, a fight breaks out in the communication bay. The conflict arises because physicist Kappa takes too long to send his message to Earth, leaving mechanic Mace without enough time to send his own. To prevent further disputes, the crew's psychologist assigns Mace a therapy session, suggesting he spend a few hours in the Earth room. After this, Kappa and Mace manage to reconcile. At the same time, the ship's captain is trying to understand the fate of the first crew by reviewing their final recordings. Soon, as the ship passes close to Mercury, communications officer Harvey unexpectedly picks up a signal, which turns out to have been sent by the missing ship, Icarus I. Due to solar interference, the signal never reached Earth, but the onboard computer successfully calculates the location of Icarus I. It turns out to be just 10 to 15,000 miles off the current trajectory of Icarus I. The crew is thrown into confusion and deliberation. The question arises, should they deviate from their course to search for Icarus I, when the success of their own mission is critical to the survival of humanity? Any deviation from the planned route could lead to unpredictable consequences and jeopardize their primary objective. Someone suggests that a rescue operation might not hinder them since Icarus has another bomb on board, which could double their chances of successfully reigniting the Sun. The captain, however, refuses to hold a vote among the crew. Instead, he decides to give the final word to physicist Kappa, as he is the most knowledgeable about detonating the bomb. After brief consideration, Kappa agrees to the detour to Icarus I, arguing that two bombs are better than one. During the critical course change, navigator Trey makes a fatal mistake, miscalculating the approach angle to the Sun. This error causes damage to the protective panels, putting the entire mission in jeopardy. To prevent disaster, the captain and Kappa are forced to perform an emergency spacewalk to repair the panels. Pilot Cassie adjusts the ship's reflective shield to create a shadow, protecting them from the deadly solar rays. According to calculations, the shift in the shadow's angle should have only caused the loss of a few antennas needed for communication with Earth. However, something unexpected happens. The greenhouse, the crew's primary source of oxygen, burns up. The onboard computer quickly returns the shield to its original position, saving the ship, but at the cost of the captain's life, who in his final moments manages to complete the repair and close the last panel. After the tragic loss of the captain, command is reluctantly taken over by the highest-ranking crew member, communications officer Harvey. He realizes the situation is critical. Without the greenhouse, their oxygen supply is limited, and their only option is to search for the missing ship, Icarus I, hoping to find the resources needed to complete their mission. Meanwhile, the botanist informs the crew that the oxygen supply will only last if there are 4 people left on board. Navigator Trey, who is indirectly responsible for the disaster, is isolated and sedated to prevent him from taking his own life. Eventually, the crew discovers the lost ship, which appears to be intact, and decides to dock and investigate. On board Icarus I, they find a garden that has turned into a lush oasis of greenery over the past 7 years. This discovery brings them hope, as the garden can provide the oxygen they desperately need. They also find a functional bomb that could be used to complete their mission. However, they soon realize that the ship is no longer capable of flight. For unknown reasons, the control system on Icarus I is completely inoperable, making the recent course change of Icarus a serious mistake. As they continue to explore the ship, the crew finds no survivors. Instead, They discover the remains of several bodies, reduced to ash in the observation room. It seems that these people deliberately disabled the protective sun filter, allowing the solar rays to incinerate them. In the captain's log, they find a strange entry from Captain Baker, who had clearly lost his sanity. In a manic state, he urges humanity to accept the inevitable and not try to escape. Suddenly, the docking clamp between Icarus I and Icarus I is destroyed, forcing the second ship to quickly retreat to a safe distance. The crew finds a single spacesuit and tries to save the one person who knows how to detonate the bomb on the sun, physicist Kappa. However, the new captain, Harvey, driven by fear and selfishness, demands the spacesuit for himself. The crew comes up with an unconventional solution. They decide to use thermal insulation materials from the compartment walls to wrap themselves and attempt to jump the 20 meters of open space, holding on to Kappa's spacesuit. Understanding that someone must stay behind to open the airlock, psychologist Searle willingly volunteers for this sacrifice. The crew successfully ejects into open space, but Harvey, hit by debris from Icarus I's docking clamp, drifts away into the vastness of space. Almost instantly, his body freezes and shatters into crystals, which are then carried away by the solar wind. Left alone, Searle heads to the observation room to gaze at the sun one last time. As Icarus I pulls away from Icarus I, he takes in his final view of the star. On board Icarus I, an emergency meeting is held to discuss the remaining oxygen supply, which is only enough for 4 people. Navigator Trey quickly realizes that the airlock couldn't have opened or malfunctioned on its own. Someone must have manually opened it. Mace takes on the responsibility of carrying out the crew's decision, though Cassie disagrees. When Mace enters the Earth room, Kappa runs diagnostics on the bomb. The ship's computer alerts him that even with the current crew size, there won't be enough oxygen to complete the mission. Kappa asks the computer who the 5th passenger, Zan, is shocked to learn that there is an unknown presence on board, currently in the observation room. Troubled and concerned, Kappa heads to the observation room, where he discovers Captain Pinbacker of Icarus I, barely recognizable due to severe burns and obvious mental deterioration. Pinbacker, whose skin is covered in horrific scars, begins speaking in a strange and unsettling manner. He reveals that he has spent all these years in solitude, communicating with God, who told him the truth. Humanity must not attempt to escape its inevitable end. Pinbacker was the one who deliberately sabotaged Icarus I's control system. Now, having lost the last remnants of his sanity, he is determined to end the Icarus I mission as well. In a fit of rage, he attacks Kappa, landing several blows. However, Kappa manages to escape the madman's grip and lock himself in the airlock. Seeing that he cannot reach the physicist, Pinbacker retreats, but before leaving, he locks the door from the outside. While Kappa is trapped, Pinbacker finds botanist Corazon, who has just discovered a live sprout in the greenhouse and felt a renewed hope for survival. But the ruthless captain extinguishes this hope, depriving the crew of their last chance to restore their oxygen supply. Pinbacker doesn't stop there. He sabotages the ship's cooling system, putting Icarus I into emergency mode. Mechanic Mace, trying to understand what's happening, contacts Kappa and, upon learning about the cooling system failure, immediately sets out to fix it. With much of the ship's electronics down, Mace is forced to perform all operations manually. This requires him to descend into the freezing coolant in an attempt to restore the system's functionality. Meanwhile, Cassie is trying to evade Pinbacker, who is pursuing her. Despite severe hypothermia, Mace continues his work and nearly repairs the system, but suddenly he gets stuck and, unable to escape, freezes. At this moment, a sudden burst of light on the ship gives Cassie a chance to seriously injure Pinbacker and flee. Trapped in the airlock, Kappa devises a way to escape. He puts on a spacesuit, drills a hole in the hatch, and opens the airlock to space. The sudden pressure change blows the hatch out, and with incredible effort, he manages to return to the ship. Once back in the control room, Kappa manually initiates a 4-minute countdown, signaling the detachment of the bomb module. After detaching, the module is supposed to head toward the sun, while the main ship is meant to return the crew to Earth. Kappa miraculously survives the opening of the central hatch and manages to get onto the bomb module, where he is surprised to find that Cassie is also still alive. Despite his severe burns and injuries, Pinbacker is still strong and obsessed with the idea of stopping the last person capable of saving humanity. As a result of their fight, they both fall into a pit, but due to the proximity to the sun, the gravity on the module shifts, turning the fall into standing on the module's surface. Taking advantage of this chance, Kappa reaches the bomb's control center and activates it. At that moment, something incredible happens. Due to the module's immense speed and its closeness to the sun, space and time begin to distort. In his final moments, Kappa witnesses a star being born right before his eyes, observing the sun's surface in the finest detail. When Kappa sent his last message to Earth, he told his loved ones that they would know the mission was a success by the morning light of the sun and that his parents could be proud of their son. We then see Kappa's sister watching his final message. She's walking with her children through the dark, snowy streets of Sydney when suddenly the sunlight begins to intensify, illuminating the entire planet. This signifies that the Icarus I mission was successful, and her brother became the hero who saved Earth and all of humanity. And with that, the story concludes. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more amazing films.